It took 16 days to realize how precious life truly is. There's a book called The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy. And the book asks this question: are you looking over your shoulder and measuring how far you've come? Or are you only consumed by how far you have to go? The distance between where you are and your destination. Are you living in the abundance that surrounds you, or in the scarcity the mind seems to constantly be attempting to trick us into believing? Right. This idea was first made known to me during a drive one day. I was on the phone with my friend Tom, who happened to have read the book. And I was pulling into my garage, and the gate wouldn't open to the parking garage. And so I'm sitting there, speakerphone on, and I'm just throwing a tantrum, right? I'm in the car screaming about how ridiculous it is that the gate won't open when I need it to. You know, it's not rocket science. How is it hard? The thing should open when you press the button. And, then remembering I was on the phone, kind of sat there for a second in silence. And after the momentary pause, Tom's voice comes through the speakers in the car. You know, his usual calm Southern accent goes, "Eddie, are you living in the gap or the gain right now?" It was a light bulb moment, right? It's a gate we're talking about, the slightest inconvenience. Not an intrusion to my health, my family, my friends, my business. The ability to live how I want to live in a country that provides the freedom to do that. It wasn't about the food I would soon eat or the water I had access to. Nope, none of that. It was a gate, a slow to open gate. And I love the idea, the perspective to stop, to look around and ask the question, how serious is this quote unquote problem? Have I slipped back into the gap in life? Forgetting about how far I've come, how much I've done, totally omitting the fact that 8 years ago, I would have given anything to be living on the other side of that gate like I do now, right? Your perspective seems to be the first thing to go, right? It requires that constant awareness and attention. And I would use this idea every once in a while on and off, right? When I could remember the gain versus the gap, attempting to cling to that perspective when possible. But the idea didn't fully reemerge in any meaningful way until almost a year later. That same friend, Tom, convinced me to join this mastermind. And, I'm in my first session, sitting in the room. It was led by an amazing guy by the name of Ben. And Ben made it known to us that day that something tragic had happened in his family. His newly born son, Ben Jr., had passed away at only 16 days old, right after battling an illness. And he's telling this story, obviously shaken, still saddened. These things never truly leave you. And what he said changed my life, rocked me at my core. He looked at the room and he said how grateful he was for those 16 days. That they were perhaps the most important 16 days of his life, that he learned more about himself in those 16 days than the rest of his life combined. That the love he got to share, the time he spent, the miracle of being with his son, he wouldn't trade that for the world. It was as much a part of him now as the air he was breathing in those 16 days were, in their own unique way, perfection. And see, we're all, sitting there looking on, thinking, this is someone who's become a friend over the past couple months, right? We are a group, we've spent time together, and it's like, well, how can we help? How can we assist? There's suffering here. What can we do? And obviously, the sentiment there is correct. Everyone's heart was in the right place, but I think what Ben reminded us in an incredibly moving, powerful way is that our toughest tests, our most difficult battles, sometimes our most painful experiences, there's beauty wrapped under those things. Sometimes the things that mean the most are disguised as our toughest tests, our battles. The courage and strength he demonstrated not only to share the story, but to use it to propel himself, his family, and the world around him brought tears to my eyes. It brought that gift of perspective, right? And certainly I don't want to speak for him, but he took what I'd assume is the most challenging 16 days of his life and allowed it to blossom into the miracle it was meant to be, which I can't imagine was easy. In fact, I can see a world where many people aren't able to do what Ben did or find that perspective that Ben found. Not without the required growth and poise. Not without, learning that gate outside the parking garage doesn't hold a candle to what's actually important. Things don't go the way we draw them up in life. Not always. Life is confusing and chaotic. It's unpredictable. Sometimes it leaves us with nothing more than a moment to look up and ask why. But if you're able to pause and seek out those answers, if you're able to step out of the gap and into the gain, if you're able to accept the beauty that life is trying to offer you, it's always there. And I hope personally to take Ben and Ben Jr.'s strength, courage, and live my life by their example, to immerse myself into life's abundance and share as much of it as I can with the world. And I encourage you to join me on the journey. Life is a miracle. Let's make the decision to see it that way.